Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all having a nice Sunday, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, very good to be back. Always a pleasure to come and talk about languages. And today I was inspired by a number of comments and questions and things I've been seeing recently talking about fake polyglots. And I just thought it kind of felt like a topic that it needed really discussing, and sort of I wanted to also get opinion and thoughts on what all this means and what you all think of it. And I absolutely loved all of the responses because I got so many replies saying what different people think of what a fake polyglot is, what a polyglot is. And I got lots of really cool really cool insights, and sometimes actually things that I'd not even thought about myself. So it was absolutely a learning experience for me to go through this. So let's start at the beginning. I think we need to sort of frame what we mean by polyglot first of all, because a number of you wrote to me and said, well, actually, before you talk about what a fake polyglot is, you need to talk about what a polyglot is. And that feels absolutely normal and right and correct. And so let's take a few minutes just to talk about what a polyglot is. So officially, the word polyglot means poly, many, glot from glossa, glosses, languages from Greek, right? Polyglot is the same word as multilingual. It's just the Greek version of multilingual, if we look at it etymologically. And what is many? Well, some people will talk about monoglot or monolingual, which is someone who speaks one language. They'll talk about diglossia, or somebody who speaks bilingual, which means they speak two languages. In English, typically when we talk about bilingualism, we're talking about people who grow up usually with two languages. It can be used in other ways, but typically when people mention a bilingual, it usually has that implication of you grow up speaking more than one language. And then some people use trilingual and triglossia, triglot, I guess you could use if you were going to the Greek route. Although triglot I don't really hear very often, but whereas trilingual I do hear people use, and they tend to mean three. And then people tend to go then to polyglot. I think that's kind of the most I've heard people say without then going to polyglot. And as I say, poly means many. So if we talk about one being one, two being a couple, three being a few, and then four or more being many, I think possibly that might be the kind of the polyglot that most people can maybe get on board with. There may be other definitions, but I'm going to sort of use that and as an idea of sort of polyglot and what speaking a number of languages might mean. So that's the sort of the number of languages I guess we're looking at to get the sort of the broadest definition, where I think that most people can converge and say, yeah, that makes sense. I think just linguistically that makes sense to sort of have it as that 4 languages or more. Okay. Now, the second thing and the very important thing that comes in then is, how well do you speak these languages? Do you have to be this kind of bilingual level that we talk about, where people are bilingual, therefore they have an ability to communicate in both languages equally? Or do we set the level a little bit lower for each language? How do we decide on that? And this is where it gets very tricky, because you talk about fluency then, and you talk about what fluency means. What is fluent? When do you speak a language fluently? And I've seen many different ideas of what fluency is and what fluency means. And someone wrote on Twitter, if I can't read a newspaper and speak like a newspaper in a language, then I don't consider that I speak that language. In all honesty, if I were to take that definition, I know some monolinguals who don't speak any language. There are definitely some people who speak one language and they cannot speak to the same standard as a newspaper. that doesn't mean that they're any, sort of that they no longer have a language. And I think that, I hope that many of you would agree that that doesn't mean that we then say that they are sort of wolf children that have no language. They definitely have a language, right? So it would be unfair, I think, to have that kind of high standard across the board. We're all different. We all have different abilities in life, and our ability to communicate is different. So if we talk about fluency for certain communities and certain sections of society, fluency is actually speaking without having to stammer sometimes for some people. So if you have a stammer or some sort of speech impediment that actually hampers you from speaking in a fluent manner, this is what is sort of more commonly understood as fluent in some of those circles. Now, if I'm going to sort of give you a definition that I think is fair enough for saying that you speak a language sort of fluently. And that definition is that you are at a level where you can communicate on pretty much any topic you want that's common in the language. So I'm not talking about very specific things, maybe like biology or topics like that, but you can talk about things that you're planning to do in the past, future, present, things like common topics that come up in conversation, like politics, economy to a degree, and things to do with the environment, things that you would naturally see, but maybe not very, very specific things. And the second part of that I will add to it is that you can learn through that language, and therefore you don't necessarily need another language to continue improving in the language. So I'm going to put myself out there a little bit and sort of give you that as my definition. And I think it's fair. I think it's quite fair if you can work and study and use a language as your main language, or a language that you use in a community on a daily basis. I think that's pretty fair that you can do that. You may be less or more equipped to talk on certain topics. Maybe you may not know much about the environment or economy, for example, or politics, so it might not be of interest to you, but that possibly wouldn't hamper you from being able to at least follow and ask questions and learn about that topic. Does that make sense? And I guess if we look at the CEFR type levels, you're looking at kind of the late B1s to B2 type level when you're able to really start doing things like that in a language. So I would say that is a basic fluency in a language. Obviously, there are more advanced levels of fluency, so I'm going to leave those for sort of debate on other things. I definitely wouldn't put it as high as you need to understand everything. That's the sort of thing I'm trying to get across. So that's what I mean by fluency, and that's what I mean by polyglot. And I hope that I haven't offended or been too crazy with my definitions. I think I've been quite liberal, and I hope that liberal to a degree that many of you can say, okay, that is fair enough. And if I've got to that stage with you, then I'm very happy. So going from that as the basis, then people that speak four or more languages, who have that ability to do all of that kind of stuff, then where do the fake people come in, and where are the fake polyglots? Now, some people have written and put names in comments to me, and sort of written names and things about actual people. I don't know how far I want to judge people. I have seen a couple of names where actually I don't know the level of all of the languages they speak, but I certainly have spoken to some people who were mentioned and who came up again and again and again, with whom I've spoken to, and I would say, well, in terms of the definition, the basic definition of a polyglot that I've just said, they would meet that criteria. Whether or not they then go on and study 10, 20, 30, or whatever, how many of the languages, and then say they speak all of those to the same level, that would be a different thing. So there are certainly going to be people who will say, I learned a language in however many days, and I had a number of comments about if you see somebody who's learned a language in a week, or some crazy amount of time, that it's not really so possible to speak a language well. I would say that it's possibly not hugely authentic to be able to do that. I mean, I'm talking from a point of view where I've just been studying Estonian. I've been doing it for 2 months now, and I still am not fluent in Estonian. I can get by in a conversation. I can talk and I can understand quite a lot of stuff, but I'm not fluent in Estonian. And I studied it full time for a month in July, and I studied it quite a lot in August too, actually. I mean, maybe not as a full-time job, but a fair number of hours. So I was doing like 3 or 4 hours a day in July, and then I was doing sort of 1 to 2 hours a day in August, and I'm still studying it now in September, and I will continue to do so. And I've covered 2,200 and something words in Estonian, and I'm able to express myself to a degree in the language, but I'm definitely not fluent. And I would say that I've had a fair amount of experience with learning languages, learning them quickly, and what that means. So this does lead me on to another aspect that we need to take into account too, and that is which languages. So, okay, getting to a point where you can express yourself or at least understand a language to a high degree, if you're talking about languages that are related, is actually quite easy to do in terms of you can do it in a short amount of time. So if you speak Polish or Czech, to study Slovak to a point where you can watch something on TV, understand the news, follow a seminar or something like that, you can do that relatively quickly. And I know this because I did just that in Slovak for the Polyglot gathering. I studied Slovak for a few weeks, and then I went and I took part in sort of a competition where I gave a presentation in Slovak, answered questions in Slovak, and was able to communicate my ideas in Slovak. The big difference is that I did it quickly, and it quickly disappeared again, because my knowledge of Slovak was based pretty much solely on my knowledge of Czech and Polish. And so it very quickly went back into my Czech and Polish. So if we're talking about languages where the languages are similar, of course you can build up an ability to understand and get there fairly quickly. If you do that over lots of languages, the big question comes: do you end up speaking a sort of an Esperanto form of all of these languages together? Sort of, do you end up speaking a mix and a mishmash of the languages that are similar, or do you speak them all absolutely perfectly without mixing too much? I would allow a little bit of mixing. I don't think it's the end of the world, but so that it basically does sound like the language that you're trying to speak to the people who usually use the language. And if the answer to that is no, it's not authentic, and no, it's not that, and when people hear you speak, it sounds like you're a speaker of the other language who's just fluffing the new language, then I would argue that you don't necessarily have the ability to say that that's a language you speak fluently in its own right. That's possibly a language that you understand well, and you can fluff to the point that you can get by in a conversation and sort of have a flowing conversation. But is that true, genuine fluency in that as a separate language? Possibly not. So they're the kind of lines that I draw. Now, when I see people say that they learned a language in a very short amount of time, the quickest time that I've seen somebody learn a language was Daniel Tammet, and he studied Icelandic for 4 days. On the TV program, it said a week, but he had 4 days with his teacher, and he did it the whole day. And he had a background in Germanic languages, so he spoke German, I think, before he started, and he had the case system was in his head. And he also obviously, as an English speaker, English is a Germanic language too. So he had some background. Still, he went on TV and did an interview, as I did with Estonian, and gave an interview. Again, just because you give an interview on TV in the language, even though I understood it and it wasn't scripted, and I followed the questions, I still would not say that I'm fluent. And I imagine that Daniel Tammet would also agree that fluency for him would have been a different level, and that would have come after that happened. So if you see anybody online saying that they learn a language to fluency within a week, chances are no, they haven't, and they can't, and they possibly don't know what fluency is or what it means to the majority of people, and they may have a very different view of what that means. They may be able to get by in very basic conversations in a fluent sounding manner, and that's different to speaking a language fluently, of course, because I can get very good at saying something very basic in a language and make it sound very nice, but that's not speaking it fluently. Why do people do this? Why do people get into this whole idea of speaking a language fluently? Why do they do it? So I heard of a number of sort of thoughts on this in the comments as well. Some of them were they thought it was a deliberate thing to fool and to entrap people and to make people feel that they would, sort of for notoriety, maybe for whatever reason that might be. But it felt like there was something disingenuous about this whole idea of learning a language in a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was. Now, my experience meeting people who have done this potentially has sort of given me this idea that there could be people who are just genuinely trying to deceive you. I'm not going to say that there aren't. I don't know. I've not come across them in my sort of dealings with people online. I've not come across them myself. But there are definitely people who suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect, if you've not heard of it, is when you have a little bit of knowledge, it feels like you know a lot. And what happens is that, for example, let me sort of show you on my iPad here. Let's see the back of my iPad. Let's say that the knowledge of the whole language is the entire iPad, okay? Somebody who has learnt a language for a few days or a week may think that the whole language is just this little corner here, okay? They may just think it's that. I'll maybe use this box to show you, to illustrate that better. So they may think that box is actually the full knowledge of the language, and they've reached that. They're able to maneuver around that kind of vocabulary and grammar, and they feel very confident with it. They feel very happy that they've done that, and they're very excited, and they're running on adrenaline. And so what they do is they think that they've reached this, right? So anybody who speaks beyond this box, they don't really take it in that that's a completely different level. And so they actually fool themselves into thinking that they speak the language better than they do, because they're not aware of this entire space. Now, take some people who do even PhDs in a language, and I've met people who have done this too, and what they'll do is they'll study pretty much almost all of this. I mean, they'll be like up here somewhere with their knowledge, right? So there'll only be a little bit of the language that they realistically, in the sort of the grand scheme of things, there's always something to learn. But what they realize is they've studied this much, and they realize that there's more to go, and that actually the language isn't just this iPad. The language is actually way beyond, and it's kind of an infinite space that it takes up. And so what happens with those people is they look at these people here with their little box of language knowledge, and they are like, that person is so confident with the language, and they think they know everything. And I've like done all this study for so many years, and I'm not there yet. And oh my God, what on earth's going on? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. And they have this doubt about their own knowledge. And this is this imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is kind of the opposite of Dunning-Kruger. So you've got the Dunning-Kruger people here who are like super, super happy with knowing very, very little, in relatively speaking. And then you've got this sort of these people with the imposter syndrome who know twice as much, if not more, than the people suffering with Dunning-Kruger. And they're like freaking out. And some people come and they'll say, and I got many messages about this too, some people will come and they'll sort of be here with the language. They'll see these people and it will put them off and demotivate them. And it kind of is demotivating, and I get that. I actually hadn't appreciated how demotivating that was. And that's one of the things that doing this, and why I said I was really interested in your responses, is that it really showed me just how demotivating that kind of thing can be. You know, to the point that some of you said to me, I actually give up on the language because I see this and I think, oh, I can't achieve anything. If they do it in a week, they do it in 2 weeks or whatever. Where am I? Please don't give up on the language because of somebody else who's sort of in this box. You know, this is kind of where, when I started this question and when I started looking at sort of the things behind the whole fake polyglot thing, my stance has always been, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. And sort of other people's knowledge and awareness and things doesn't really affect me directly in any way. So I'm quite happy in my knowledge and lack of knowledge, and I feel quite happy with where I am. So I've never really been bothered about the whole somebody else being a fake polyglot or not a fake polyglot, whatever else, because it doesn't naturally affect me. But I hadn't appreciated that it can affect you and it can affect people out there. And so I absolutely would encourage you to sort of be very mindful of the box people, the Dunning-Kruger people. And that you, if you are having this kind of reaction, are quite probably this bigger iPad person. You're this imposter syndrome person. You might have this, okay? So I think that it's well worth taking stock of what this means, and whatever their motivations. And some of you did say, you know, maybe it's YouTube revenue, it's you know, from getting lots of views and whatever else. The thing is, right, that when it comes to knowledge like this, possibly some people will make money off it. I mean, undoubtedly people will make money off their little box of knowledge. There's absolutely, I mean, no doubt. It's quite lucrative. And that's why we have terms like snake oil salesman and things like that, where people use this to kind of bamboozle people who know even less than the box, or people who are freaked out by the box, to sell them products or to do things, or to sort of, I don't know, whatever they do. The thing is that the actual knowledge that you have is in your head, and only you know what's in your head, and only you benefit from what's in your head. These people are still going to go around doing their own little thing and in their little Dunning-Kruger box, and they're going to be as happy as Larry doing all of this. And, you know, good on them. If they're happy doing it, fantastic. But we need to be happy in our own skin. We need to know that what we're doing actually makes a difference to us, to our awareness, to our world. And if your goal is to just go around saying, hi, how are you? My name is, I'm from here. I love your language. Isn't it beautiful? I'd love to have 2 noodles, please, with extra sauce, or whatever it is you want to do in the language. It's all well and good, and you can do that and have a fulfilling life doing that in lots of languages. But be aware that that's what you're doing. You're doing that in lots of languages. And if that's not what your goal is, then it doesn't matter how much you emulate that or buy the products to emulate that, because that's all it will be. It's kind of smoke. It won't take you to what you truly want if you want to have this fluency that I described at the beginning. It won't take you to that. If you want to get to that level and you want to do that in a number of languages, then the only person that really benefits is you, and you're on your own track with this. The other thing that I would say as well is when you see somebody who has learned a language really, really well, and you think, I'm never going to get to that level. Honestly, you could look at somebody like, I mean, for example, take me. I'm struggling with Korean. I have been struggling with Korean since like January. It's my Korean's a train wreck. It really is an absolute train wreck. I kill the language on a daily basis, and I have zero regrets. I mean, if I went to Korea, they'd probably arrest me and put me in prison for life. I mean, it's that bad. It really is that bad. And then I could look at Lindy and say, Lindy is one of these famous YouTube polyglots, right? But Lindy's learned Korean to this level, and I have learned Korean to like below my feet level. I could look at Lindy and say, okay, that's really demotivating for me because she speaks the language and she communicates well, and I've heard really great comments about her Korean. But you know what? There's also, when you learn a language, as you go up these levels of when you get that, you don't carry on with the same speed when you're learning, right? In the beginning, like my Estonian, I went to this level, right, where I was having a conversation with somebody. I don't go straight up to here. To get up to here is going to take me lots longer. It's going to be a very slow process. If I ever get there, I may never get there. I may never need to get there. And these are the things that I have in my head when I'm thinking about other people, and I'm just inspired then. All I can be left with is inspiration that it's possible to get there. Lindy got there, why can't I? If I want to, and if I put the work in, of course, because I mean, Lindy's amazing. But I mean, if I get there, right? But this is the kind of thing that I could sort of keep in my head. It's definitely not about somebody's learned a language in a week and I can't. So, I mean, also on YouTube videos, and if you're seeing these people, you know, in different places, they can learn sentences off by heart over and over again and say them. Really, the proof's in the eating. You know, you need to have a conversation for over a long period of time. And as I said, you know, I started this sort of conversation on the fake polyglots that people mentioned to me, and there was at least one name that I saw there, and I am going to mention his name, and it's Wouter. And I did an interview with Wouter, and he was going to do, we were going to do a kind of a sort of a normal, the type of video that he makes. And I said, actually, no, I just want to speak to you about something that's more important in different languages. And he was able to speak in those languages with me. So if you look at that video, I mean, whatever you think about his other languages, he was able to do that. Another example I will name as well is Ziad Fazar. Ziad Fazar gets a bad rap, and he gets a bad rap for a very good reason. He wrote that he learnt a number of his languages within a 3-year period, which obviously we know is extremely, and when I say extremely difficult, I mean impossible to do to that kind of fluent level. But he does speak a number of his languages to a very high level, and he's very good at them. So he's still a polyglot. So he's not a fake polyglot. And then these are the two of the names that came out to me. And they're two names that I can say they're not in that sense fake polyglots. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But and there are other people like this, right? Who they get to that point with a few languages, but then what they want to do is they may not have the Dunning-Kruger effect, even some of these people. They may just actually just want to be in this area of communication where it's basic communication. And that's also possible. So they combine knowledge, quite good knowledge of a number of languages with that level. And that's because they want to have that sort of rush and that sort of adrenaline pumping through their bodies when they start using a language and putting words together to make sentences, because that's the cool thing, right? That's really nice to do. And some of them want to just do that. Now, I know that I've spoken for like 30 minutes on this, and I'm conscious that a lot of you have written things here, and I'm going to do my best to get through the comments. So thank you for listening to I hope I covered a lot of what you wanted me to say. So let me see. Okay. I'm doing my best to look at these for a second. There's so many comments. The ones on Instagram are a nightmare to see. So if you can pop them in the question box, it's easier for me to see them. On YouTube, it's a bit easier because I can make it bigger instead of looking at it. Okay. Just wanted to thank you. You're very welcome. Oh, you enjoyed the Burning Man. That's great. Thank you. And you can ask questions. Of course, you can ask questions. Heritage of fake polyglots. Polyglot is a very interesting topic. Yeah, I'm glad you like it, Carlos. People crave authenticity when it comes to language learning as well. Yeah, I think there is. I mean, it can be very difficult. I mean, one of the comments that was made actually did make me think of something, and that's kind of fake news generally. I think that one of the key things that we're going to have to be taught at school, teach our children at school, as the generations go on, is critical thinking. And that is understanding what the word research means. So research does not mean going on Google and writing in a couple of words and looking at the first few articles, and maybe even just looking at the titles or the main description of the articles. It's actually researching where things have come from. So if you have a news article that says something, even a news article, right? Journalists don't understand everything they're writing about. So often you have to look for where are they quoting, what does it actually say, and you would be very surprised at how often the source material has zero to do or is actually the opposite of what's written in the news article. And it can kind of happen in other areas too. I mean, we see fake news kind of reign supreme at the moment, and many people will say, they use many philosophical arguments for to try and convince other people that they're right. So calls to authority. I have a PhD, I have a doctorate, I have a master's degree, I have whatever, or I know somebody who has all those things, and they said, or I say, but actually, is that PhD or is that doctorate, is that master's degree, is it in the relevant area? First of all, if it isn't, then you possibly don't know what you're talking about, or you may know what you're talking about to the same level as I do as a layperson, right? So that's one thing. The other thing that people sometimes do as well is, yeah, I mean, we hear gaslighting and all these kinds of things that people will use, but very often it will be this kind of call to authority. I think it's particularly when it's in our community. I've got the secret of how you learn this or how you do that. And it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous. I get that. And I get that bothers a number of people out there. I absolutely get it. Why don't you have a stream for 1 hour or 2 hours in every language that you speak? So Richard Simcott, why don't you have for every language you speak? Well, the thing is, Sam, is while I don't have that much time in my day, I have to work and I have to live and I have a family. So if I were to do that for an hour every day, some of the languages I speak, I wouldn't actually get anyone coming. And I know that because during the Polyglot conference, I actually hosted rooms to talk in different languages as practice sessions. And a number of sessions I was on my own, or people came and they didn't speak it, but they were just interested in the language. And so it kind of turned into nothing. And I did that on Clubhouse too. So I've done that in a number of places, but it's not very effective. But I mean, English does tend to be the most understood language, and it's a language that I only really use in these kinds of contexts, because at home I don't use English very much, and outside the house I definitely don't use English pretty much almost at all. So I don't really feel I need to prove anything personally. I'm quite happy with what I know. So I wouldn't want to do it for that reason, but then also I wouldn't want to kind of waste my day doing 100 different hours of these types of things where no one comes, because what's the point? And also, I'm going to talk about the same thing in many languages. It would kind of be a bit pointless. Has there been any updates on the Polyglot institution like Professor Arguelles wanted? No, so Alex, he works at an institution in Minnesota now. So, and there they do, it's Concordia Language Villages. And there they do different types of language training. And that's quite a cool place. So he kind of gets that kind of thing from that, I guess. But no, nothing more about the actual Polyglot Idea School. I think there's a lot of pretenders. Language, okay. Fake, just memorizing sentences in languages. Yeah, possibly there are people who memorize sentences. I think sometimes what they do is not actually just that. I think what they do is they learn to manipulate the basic structures of the language, and they can just they get good at substituting out words and phrases as we do as we grow in the language knowledge that we have. But they kind of get stuck at that exciting level, because when you sort of get past there, it gets kind of hard because you have to learn a lot more vocabulary. Salut. Sam is the fake polyglot. Okay, Hunter. He's a total fool. Dear Sam, I'm sorry I read that out, but dear, you don't seem to be very popular with that. I mean, I think it's a valid question for Sam to ask. I really do. I have no problem with you asking that question at all. Why don't I do it? Yeah, I guess I just don't have anything to prove, really. I mean, I go to so many events where I speak my languages very often and have done in the community, so I don't really feel that need personally. I know several languages, but I can't say how many. When can you say you know a certain language? Yeah, I talked about this at the very beginning, so maybe that was covered there. Okay, I'm trying to follow all of these. Sorry about this. I like that I'm getting some nice comments about the idea of fluency and stuff, which is good. Okay. Oh, Sam, you're turning into a bit of an. Yeah. Okay, so I'm speaking English now, so you know I speak English. Yeah. Well done. Well done. Okay. That's funny. Okay. Would you say something to people who want to impress with display list of languages that can actually have a working language under their belt? Yeah, do you know what? I think that this is why I never talk about the languages I speak fluently or how many I speak fluently, because it's kind of, yeah, I mean, it's so arbitrary. So I tend to talk about the languages I've studied instead, because, yeah, I mean, studying a language, it doesn't really describe exactly all of the levels that you studied it to, but it gives an idea of the kind of the background in language study that you've had, right? So yeah, that's kind of where I come from with it. And I think you can qualify it if you're worried about being seen as a fake polyglot, then you can always qualify it and say, I'm learning this language. This is kind of what I do. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Может позаниматься какой-то книг, что чтобы читать на русском языке. Я сейчас это B1. Хорошо уровень, спасибо, классно. Но сейчас я не у меня книга по-русски, нормально, но я не изучаю русский язык сейчас, потому что это как язык, что я изучал, в Молдавии, потому что нам надо там говорить по-русски, по-румынски тоже, и поэтому. Но я щас не, у меня нет очень многих книг, по-русски. Я изучаю некоторые языки, через русский язык, и потому что, в принципе, есть по-армянски, по-грузински тоже у меня, книги по-русски. Изучаться, армянского или грузинского, No, русский нет. Okay, go back. Fanboys. Oh, that's hilarious. I love it. What's the purpose of the live stream if you don't even care to respond to people's comments? Sam, because the live stream is, I have a topic that I talk about for half an hour, for half of the live stream, and then I come back to the questions. So unfortunately, you possibly weren't patient enough for me to finish what I had to say and then come back. If I keep interrupting what I'm saying at the beginning to answer every single question, I will never get everything said that I want to say. It's kind of, yeah, how this works. Let me see. Okay, wow. Um, okay, let's see if I can. I'll get through as many of these as I can. I'm sorry, it just takes a while for me to go back through them. Yeah, you're right. I'm not trying to sell anything to anyone. This is kind of me just talking about something I'm passionate about. So, yeah, you're sort of not getting a sales pitch from me. See, this is actually, Sam reminds me of another fallacy. The way Sam's writing in this, it's called the no true Scotsman fallacy. So it's kind of used a lot in philosophical debates where um, the thing never exists because you don't believe it. So therefore, no one does this, or no one believes it, or no one is a true Scotsman. So all true Scotsmen, for example, the fallacy goes like this: all true Scotsmen eat porridge, and if you don't eat porridge, you're not a true Scotsman. But then there are Scotsmen that actually do eat porridge or don't eat porridge. So it kind of goes a little bit like that, and I think maybe Sam, you're buying into that fallacy, unfortunately. Okay. The more of a language that you learn, the more you realize that they haven't. Okay, fun of it. Okay. Oh dear. Um, I think much of the criticism of fake polyglots supposes that most polyglots are fake and that it's not attainable to learn several languages, which I think is a bigger scam and more demotivating. It's an interesting perspective, actually, Hugo. Yeah, maybe that's it. Is the I think that does play in a little bit to the notary Scotsman fallacy, that if you've never really done that or come across it, therefore it can't be true. Um, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. I think maybe that makes. You mean that? I mean, I understand. I understand that that argument absolutely, and I think, yeah, I get it. I get if you've never experienced it, then it's difficult to sort of fully accept, I guess. Um, Most polyglots have never even made a YouTube video and just enjoy polyglottery by reading literature and connecting with people. Yeah, that's true, Hugo. That's absolutely true. There are many people actually I meet that are polyglots that are not on YouTube. They're not making content necessarily. It's their life. That's what they do. And to be honest, I mean, I didn't really make many things until the whole COVID thing kicked in, because I had work to do and had other things to do, and I was using my languages for my work and for my life. So I wasn't really, yeah, I wasn't really doing that much. I guess it depends what you're doing online. Um, oh, Sam, dearie me. Okay. What is the most ridiculous thing? Okay, wow. Okay. Oh dear, Sam really has bought into the no true Scotsman fallacy. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay. I mean, Sam, you're very welcome to believe the one true Scotsman fallacy. You buy into that and live that. If that makes you happy, great. Yeah, let me see. I can see you're very vocal about it. Dearie me. Okay. Ziad Fazar with Delusions of Grandeur. His English isn't even that good. I don't know that's fair, Jan, because he did speak, he communicates in English. He has an accent, but I don't, he does. Okay. Dearie me. Oh, YouTube's blocked something that Sam wrote. Dear, even YouTube doesn't. Oh dear, YouTube doesn't buy into what you're saying, Sam. Sorry. Thank you for all of your kind words. Yeah. What's my day job? So my day job, I work I've been working in social media and using my languages for multinational, multilingual and multicultural projects and giving advice on how they would fit in. So part of my job has been assessing people in their ability to understand and also write in a wide set of languages. So I would read their ability to create content and then assess whether or not that was sufficient and good enough in terms of using tone of voice for different clients. So I would interview people in a variety of languages and then make assessments on whether or not they had the skills necessary to perform the jobs for our clients. And that would be things that they would rely on for marketing or for community interaction across their brands, so whichever brands they were involved in. So that's the kind of work I've been doing for the last 12 or 13 years, maybe. And then before that, I worked with the Foreign Service, and I used a number of my languages in that work. And then I also worked in technical support, and I became a network engineer. I worked in the Netherlands, and I had to work through 8 languages for that role. And then before that, I was using maybe 5 languages before that. But yeah, eight languages I was using in the technical role on a daily basis. So yeah, it's been quite a long journey with the languages. Let's see. Yeah. Oh dear. What do you think about the legend about Cardinal Mezzofanti? That's a really good question. So Mezzofanti, it's interesting that sort of it tends to be kind of the very best polyglots lived, in a time where we can't go back and assess. So part of me wonders, because I know that whenever living polyglots talk about what they do, they often have things exaggerated as conversations go on and stories are told about them, and so I'm fairly confident that a similar thing happened with people from the past as well, historical figures like Mezzofanti. I don't want to diminish his achievements and what he did, because that's not for me to do, and I'm not in a position to be able to do that. And yeah, I think it would be fairly disrespectful to do so. But I would say that just how humans tend to interact, it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. If I don't have any content with complete context, like have audio, a transcription audio, okay. How would you recommend? Oh, that's good. Depends on the language, really. So if you have transcripts and things to audio, but oh, actually, I don't follow what you're saying. Sorry, I just read that and I reread it, and I'm still not sure. So if you had audio but you didn't have audio, and you had transcripts or you didn't have transcripts, I'm curious to know what languages did you have trouble practicing at the Polyglot conference? Oh yeah, so definitely Albanian. Few people spoke it there. Also some of the Celtic languages. So I'd started learning Cornish, and obviously it's not a widely studied language, so things like that. But also, I mean, Macedonian, my home language, Macedonian, not many people really speak it in the community. I speak it to a very fluent level. So yeah, there are languages like that for sure that yeah, I don't really get to use an event, a language event. It tends to be your kind of run-of-the-mill, you know, languages like French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, German, even some of the Scandinavian tongues, and then some of the bigger, sort of more widely spoken Slavic languages as well. Okay. Oh dear. Ричард говорит по-русски лучше меня. Спасибо. Через 6 месяцев. Спасибо. Я не знаю. Это интересно. How's my Korean going? Not very well. My Korean's terrible. Absolutely terrible. Sam, you seem very angry. I'd suggest maybe going out and getting a glass of water. Do something positive with your life. This is quite funny. But please do take care of yourself, okay? Um, okay. Petroslav Ben Ava Gager. I'm impressed. Deary me, Sam, you are very angry. Dear. Rich, I wanted to ask, are you still doing D-list? Yeah, I am. I'm still doing Estonian. So I do, I've halved the number of words I learn a day now. So I just do 15 words a day through Speakly. I want to get through the course to see how well I can speak after the course, so that the learning will continue for a long time. It's not the easiest thing. Okay. Question. What path order would you say for learning Romance languages? So I started with French when I was about 5 years old. And then I had Spanish at school. And then, so I kind of had that decided for me. I found French quite a good language to start with, just because the spelling's a bit crazy. Hola Richard, sé que no te hace falta probar algo, pero me encantaría si pudiera grabar nuevos vídeos en castellano y tu demás lengua. Muchas gracias. Sí, pues a mí me gustaría. Lo que pasa es que no tengo habilidades para hacerlo bien. Eso es mi problema, la verdad, con otros. No es como hacer vídeos, por ejemplo, como hago ahora, hablando así en vivo, está bien, porque no tengo que hacer nada y puedo decir lo que me dé la gana. Pero cuando estás preparando un vídeo, es que creo que hay explicaciones para hablar de una forma muy corta, muy no sencilla, pero considerada. Y diría que sí que tengo que tomar mucho más tiempo para hacer esto. Y luego, para poder grabar un vídeo también me hace falta, sí, más habilidad en estos guiones, que es mi problema con lo de grabar vídeos. Pero sí, me gustaría. ¿Tienes algún tema que te gustaría que tomes? No sé, como quieras. Dime, me puedes decir, sin problema. Entiendo, entendo também, fala português ou inglês? Sim, falo português também, sim, claro. Se você tiver alguma coisa que você quiser dizer, em português, ou perguntar, sem problema. Richard, did you also learn Japanese? I've seen one in which you, okay, you write, okay, anyone write you in Japanese? I studied Japanese just for one semester at university in Sweden. But but then I haven't really kept it up at all. And the level that I reached after one semester was I got through hiragana, katakana, and then 50 kanji or so, and it wasn't really enough to say much in Japanese. So I wouldn't say I speak Japanese. I've studied some Japanese, is what I'd say. Okay. Martini method, what do you think? Marini, sorry. Emanuele Marini is a friend of mine, and he's actually super impressive when it comes to speaking lots of different languages at a high level. He's passed his C2 exam in things like Greek and Polish, and so he's Italian, and he and I always speak in Serbian or Macedonian together. That's our kind of default language. We never use English. He doesn't like speaking English that much. So yeah, he's great. His method of learning languages possibly is not necessarily what I would do myself. But kind of like with Luca as well, Luca's method is not necessarily what fits me either. But they both yield results. So what can I say? Okay. What order of the Romance languages? Okay, I see this again. Let me see. Out of curiosity, is anyone here interested in conlanging? Okay, just wow. So many comments on this. It's super, super difficult to go through them all. Oh my word. Muchas gracias. Pregunta de Mesofante. Muy agradecido. De nada. De nada. A ver. Je spreekt heel goed Nederlands. Ja, bedankt hoor. Ja, heeft Nederland gewoond? Ja, ja. Ja, ik heb 2 jaar lang in Rotterdam gewoond. Dus ja, Nederlands voor mij is gewoon een taal die ik goed heb moeten leren. En ja, ik heb elke dag in Nederlands gewerkt. Dus het maakt wel veel uit hoor. Als je in een stad 2 jaar lang gewoon in die taal ook werkt. Dat is wel een verschil, denk ik. Dus 15 words a day is not easy. No, not easy, but definitely easier than 30. Okay. Okay, let's see. Okay. Nathan, tudo bem? Isso, os benefícios. Okay. Thank you for all of your very nice comments. I appreciate it. Nihonjin desu. Ah, okay. Irisujin desu. Let's see. Richard is known your great accent in your languages. What do you attribute to this? Deliberate practice. Actually, I don't really focus so much on my accents. It's sort of if they're good or if people perceive them as good, then I'm very, very happy, of course, but I don't focus so much on them. Focus more on pronunciation, actually just having it understandable to people is for me the most important thing. Okay, merhaba Richard. Different content as possible. So repeating the same content over and over, sometimes yes, but not always. So for example, at the moment I'm watching Star Trek in Turkish. I watched Voyager right the way through in Turkish, and then I'm watching Deep Space Nine, only like an episode a day or so, not crazy amounts. But no, I can tend to just carry on. Comprehensible input, I think, is pretty important, especially when I get to a language like Turkish, where I can already speak about a lot of the very normal things. It's much more important to sort of just hear lots and lots of things over and over, like in different places. Okay, you see. Ammetto non c'è molta onestà a volte, se poliglotti bisognerebbe essere fluente in una lingua per annullare tra quello che si parla al posto che tipo e basta ammetterlo. Sì, veramente questo è molto importante anche veramente usare, le lingue, studiare fino a quel punto che uno vuoi. Mi sembra un po' assurdo, studiare una lingua per un'altra persona, per esempio, perché una persona vuole che tu, parli un'altra lingua bene o perfettamente. Allora questo per me non è una motivazione, assolutamente no. Uhm per me è più importante anche uhm, usare le lingue come veramente ho bisogno nella mia vita. Allora lo faccio così. Okay. Can you speak Polish? I can get by in Polish, yeah. Um, you're 16. Fantastic. Would you recommend learning languages at university? If you want to learn languages at university, I would, because it's fun. It's fun to do. When you study them at university, you have to get out of your comfort zone quite a lot because you have to read certain things that you wouldn't necessarily read and talk about things that you wouldn't necessarily talk about, and it kind of shows you a different angle, I guess. So Polish, tak, mówię po polsku, ale też to jest nie mówię bardzo często, w Macedonii, po polsku teraz, dlatego że, nie Polaków i dlatego to jest, bardzo trudne, ale rozumiem bardzo dobrze. Myślę, że to bez problemu. Hi Richard, your live videos are always informative and inspiring. Thank you very much. What's the most difficult language to pick up? So I found Georgian pretty difficult to even get by in at basic level. Multilingual children, I think we'll have to wait for another day. It's a very long topic. Okej. Ingen fara. Kan inte riktigt fundera på ämnen just nu på att tänka på våra livestream på andra språk. Ja, det kunde jag göra. Problemet är alla frågor är på engelska, så vad kan jag göra? Jag kan inte bara prata ett annat språk så, plötsligt så jättekonstigt, eller hur? Vad kan jag göra? Do you speak okay. I see. So yeah, I mean, a lot of these questions are actually in English, so that's another thing as well, which is fine. Bach o Gymraeg fel hyn. Neu fynd. Dwi ddim yn defnyddio Cymraeg ar hyn o bryd yn Macedonia, ond mae'n iaith dim ond yn Haer yng Nghymru dwi'n siarad ia, ond yn ôl yn y dre, ond rŵan dwi ddim yn defnyddio'r iaith o gwbl, deud y gwir. Wel, dwi'n gwrando tipyn bach yn Gymraeg wrth gwrs, mae gen i Radio Cymru hefyd ar y we, ond mae'r safle iawn dysgu Cymraeg, dysgu Cymraeg .cymru yw. Rhaid i fi hefyd defnyddio'r iaith tipyn bach yn mwy. Dwi isio wneud hynny, ond y problem, a deud y gwir, efo a lot o ieithoedd fel hyn, dydy ddim posib, ddim amhosib a defnyddio'r pob iaith, pob dydd. Okay. Have that community on campus. And Polish is great. Thank you. I don't know if my Polish is great. It's probably quite basic, but I understand it fairly well. It's very kind of you. Okay. Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you for all of the very kind questions. What do I think of Pennsylvania Dutch or Swiss German? I love them. I think they sound very nice. I don't speak either of them though. I can kind of do a fake Swiss German accent, but I can't speak it properly. Yeah, Sam, I don't understand what your issue is, but anyway, it's very strange. You, I mean, I don't. I speak 5 languages at home. It's quite odd that you're with trolling. You're obviously a very bored person. Thank you, Richard. It's always a pleasure. Okay, yeah. Mulla on jaapalainen. Mä olen Tallinnas ja opin eesti kieltä. Se on tore. Se on tore. Yeah, let's see. Wat zijn jouw vreemde taal? Okay, that's not for me. Okay. Okay. Yeah, actually, I'd be quite interested to know, Sam, what are your languages? You sort of mention people speaking languages, but do you understand any languages? If I were to speak a language, would you know it? Is there a language you understand, Sam? Because really, you've only written in English the whole time, which is quite interesting. But anyway, good luck. What if you've only read to a high level in many Latin? Okay, in the video calls of polyglots. So yeah, some people do just read in. I'm looking at the Instagram question. Sorry. Yeah, some people do just read. Like Professor Arguelles loves to read, and he mainly reads in languages, kind of as a polymath. He does speak a number of them pretty well, but he likes to read a lot. That's one of his priorities. Right, exactly. I love these questions. Let me see. Kako me радува што македонски. Добро, home language. Да, тоа за мене стварно така е. Значи не само дека го викам тоа така. Тоа е го зборувам вака, го употребувам македонскиот јазик секој ден, веќе 17 години. Значи тоа не е мало време за јазик и нормално тоа ми е мене прв јазик вака што највеќе го употребувам дома и исто така надвор од дома. Зборувам вака на улицата, зборувам македонски. Англискиот, например, не го употребувам скоро воопшто во општеството или по дуќаните, по рестораните и такви работи. Не, тоа нема смисла за мене. Смислам, зошто? И така, тоа ми исто така брачен јазик. Значи, го употребувам тоа со сопругата, па тоа ми е мене најнормален язик да користам. Se poder falar com você ao vivo, por favor. Sim, pode ser. Sim, pode escrever alguma coisa também. Eu posso fazer um live em português sem problema. Então, sim, isso é possível, sim. Muito obrigado. Você pode somente escrever uma mensagem em Instagram. Já tem feito várias vezes em português com outros brasileiros. Então, isso sim, sem problema. Perhaps this age obsession with polyglots and the sake of just knowing languages. Yeah, maybe there is some sort of, I don't know. I mean, we live in a time where we want things quickly, right? So fortunately, you don't get these things very quickly. But yeah, it's interesting that, yeah, people do that. Thanks for speaking Polish. It gave me incentive to keep learning. Okay, I got to the end of my questions on Instagram. So if you do have any other questions, please pop them in the questions box, because unfortunately in the chat it's a little bit long and difficult for me to see. It was even a bit long with all of the stuff in on YouTube as well today. But okay. Okay. Deary me. Okay. Any more questions? Can't see any more questions in the feed, so I think we've got to the hour. And oh, Sam's written a question in a language. Here we go. Okay, Sam, you've written a question in a language. Amazing. Well done. Let's see. Oh dear, it's gone past. I don't speak Arabic, Sam. It's not one of the languages I ever say that I speak. But good on you for trying a language that I've never said I speak. What would you recommend someone who's studying a language full time today? German, of course. Okay, person Arabic. Yeah. Let me see. I can't see any more questions really here. Jag svarade på någon fråga hur många språk det kan behärska. Det är jättesvårt att säga för att jag har använt kanske 25 för mitt jobb, men jag säger jag behärskar dem. Det är en annan sak. Jag skulle aldrig säga att jag behärskar så alla språk som jag har använt för mitt jobb till exempel. Alla de språken som jag använder hos mig, och så det är jättelätt att säga jag kan alla de där språken utan tvivel, så okej. Men det är jättesvårt för att det är varje gång så vet jag inte hur bra jag pratar ett språk utan att använda det språket. Till exempel polskan till exempel, jag har pratat just nu, men hur bra det är en annan fråga för mig. Det är svårt att säga det. Var det huvudstaden i Frankrike? Det är Paris, Sam. Paris. Sam, it's amazing. A very boring hour that you had there, Sam, but you stuck with it to the end. Good on you. Oh my word. Oh my word. Thank you very much. You're very kind. I just read your last comment. Okay, great. Okay, thank you all so much for joining me. And yeah, if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out. If you've got any ideas for another talk or another live stream, then please feel free to let me know. I'd be very happy. And yeah, I would love to hear from you. Yeah, nice to talk to you, and enjoy the rest of your day and happy language learning. Take care. Bye-bye.